I'm Josh, I'm a qualified actuary and I have a first-class master's in pure mathematics, and in this video I'm going to talk through how to become more intelligent than 99% of people in just 3 steps. Step 1, set a goal. Most people don't set long-term, meaningful goals. If you read into AI, which I have done, by reading all these books, you realise that creating artificial intelligence is about creating a goal-seeking machine. So the basic model of intelligence is an agent that takes action and uses feedback from that action to course correct. Think about the rocket that's on its way to the moon and is off course 90% of the time. That rocket is constantly making adjustments to its path to get it to its destination, despite being off track most of the time. In the book The Future of the Mind by Michio Kaku, who is a physicist and one of the founding fathers of string theory, he has several definitions of intelligence, starting from the lowest form of intelligence, which is ground zero, which is essentially an organism that reacts to its external environment and makes adjustments. So an example of this lowest form of intelligence is a thermostat. So as the room gets colder, the thermostat receives this feedback, switches on, i.e. takes action, and brings up the temperature of the heating system, which brings up the ambient temperature of the room. So that's the lowest form of consciousness. The highest form of consciousness, according to Michio, is where something can understand its place in the world and simulate in its mind future courses of action to try and determine the best course of action to get it to its goal. He says, human consciousness is a specific form of consciousness that creates a model of the world and then simulates it in time by evaluating the past to simulate the future. This requires mediating and evaluating many feedback loops in order to make a decision to achieve a goal. So with all that in mind, most people don't set themselves goals. The environment just sets it for them and they just react, which is a much lower form of intelligence. Indeed, this is the first 3 habits of the 7 habits of highly effective people. Be proactive, i.e. don't be acted on, act. Begin with the end in mind, i.e. set a goal, and put first things first, i.e. prioritize. So bringing this all together, you would ideally sit down and work on some very long-term goals that are extremely meaningful to you and work out the actions you need to take to get you towards those goals. So this might mean that you prioritize, your key work projects above emails, or it means that you prioritize your exercise above scrolling on Instagram because you've set yourself the goal of running a marathon or delivering a key client project at work. The reason why we want to do a long-term goal is by taking consistent action, you actually get better at that goal and you're more likely to achieve a better goal. If the goal is a very long-term goal, you'll also benefit from compounding as you get used to taking the actions and you get better at actually making your way towards that goal. There's a great quote from Alex Hormozy which says, most people overestimate what they can do in a day but underestimate what they can do in a decade. I definitely didn't follow this advice in my personal life. My goals were typically set by my environment, so going through school set my goals, going through university set my goals, going through work, the actuarial society set my goals, and it wasn't until I left that I had to really sit down and think, what did I want to do in my life? And it wasn't until I had my baby when I thought, even longer term, I was just reacting to the current next most important thing. I very rarely thought about the future. So yeah, I think it's worth sitting down and really thinking, what is a meaningful goal to you so you can work towards it. At work, I did follow this advice. My current role is to help our portfolios get to net zero, and that's a 25-year based goal, and that's a goal that's over the next 25 years, so definitely a long-term one there. So set a long-term meaningful goal. So step 2 is to expand your knowledge through reading. Most people don't read information or books related to their goals, and I know this because I was that person. Steven Pinker states in his book The Blank Slate that the mental world can be grounded in the physical world by the concepts of information, computation and feedback. So that relates to the kind of model of intelligence we spoke about before, where you're an agent that takes action, gets feedback on their action and changes course. And this kind of expands that model because you're an agent that has information, some computational ability and the ability to take action, i.e. generate feedback. So if you decide what to do based on the computation of current information in your head, which is typically people's beliefs and their current knowledge set based on experience, then they're going to be severely limited in the actions they can take if that information set is limited in any way. So how do we improve our information without taking loads of action to generate loads of feedback? Well, you can learn from the mistakes of others, and the easiest way of doing that is to read books and update the information stored in your head. So most people don't do this, and in the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, habit number 7 is sharpen the saw, i.e. update the information set that you're using to take action. And the easiest way to do that is to read books related to your goal. So examples of how I've applied this in the past is I wanted to lose weight, so I read the top 10 books on weight loss, and that vastly improved my weight loss journey because I got better actions. I did better things to help me lose the weight. Another example is my goal is to save more money, so I read a load of books about how not to spend and to save money. I think the key thing here is to push through ego. So I think a lot of people walk around thinking they know it all, but it's one of those situations where you can apply the phrase, you don't know what you don't know. There's so much knowledge out there and you can be blind to it if you don't go looking for it. I forced myself to read the top 10 books in each space because I pushed through the boundary of not being interested or, judging a book by its cover, for example. If I don't feel an affinity to a book, sometimes I don't want to start it, but I've realized that if I just push through the top 10 books, you can learn so much and vastly update your knowledge and find all those unknown unknowns. I think the easiest way to do this is to get the books on Audible and listen to them on 2.5 times. That's what I do. Just scan the book for information. I feel like I pick up most of the text, and if I'm particularly interested, I'll go back and read it. If it's not on Audible, I'll get it on Kindle because that makes reading very efficient as well. I would much rather read, but my life is currently set up to be more conducive to audio at the moment, just because I do a lot of cleaning and cooking and looking after my family. I also think it's important to reread books that are particularly interesting to you. As Robin Sharma said, who wrote the 5am Club, books meet you where you are, so it's beneficial to keep rereading things. You'll get so much more from it if you do that. So the fact that most people don't update their information set is fairly common in the professional space, I would say. People tend to think they're done learning when they've done their professional qualifications, or they just learn through experience on the job. So it's definitely a dimension where you can become more intelligent if you read around the subject that you're working in. There's a great quote from a magazine I read once which asked a senior engineer how he earned so much money, and the engineer replied, "I read one book a year on my chosen field, and that's one more than anyone else reads." So that just shows you the kind of power people have realized can come from reading around your subject. I definitely applied this. I read around the topic of sustainability and sustainable investing, and that caused my career to kind of explode and completely change the trajectory of my job. So I would definitely attest to this being beneficial. Finally, there's another kind of testament to this being beneficial in Nassim Taleb's book Anti-Fragile. He talks about how he sensed that there was a problem with the current probability theory that was being used in financial markets. So he went to the bookshop and ordered every book on probability theory or stochastic processes that they had. He then spent the next 3 to 4 years reading them all, and he said that set him up for life. He never had to work again, and within 5 years he made a killing on the stock market. So yeah, really great example in there of how reading everything around your topic can just put you miles ahead. It's a fantastic investment. And then step number 3 is taking action towards your goal. Now, you've heard me kind of talk about this already. We've kind of discussed the model of you're an agent that takes action, receives feedback, and then course corrects. And that's the model of you. And so to be more intelligent, it's about doing that in a better way and achieving the goals that you want. So the problem here is that most people don't take consistent, persistent action to achieve their goal, even if they had a goal in the first place. So going back to the Pinker quote, the mental world can be grounded in the physical world by the concepts of information, computation, and feedback. So by taking action, you're grounding your mental world into the physical world and updating your understanding, i.e. your information set, through that feedback. This boils down to the fact that by taking action, you are ultimately creating new experiences, and those new experiences can update your information set, which helps you take better actions in the future. So one way to become more intelligent is just to take action towards your goal faster and get that iterative feedback loop going faster and faster, so you learn quicker, and then you can move on and take better actions in the future. The point here again is that most people don't do this. Most people don't take action. Most people, I'm going to refer back to the 7 habits of highly effective people here and go back to habit 1, which is be proactive. There's a whole industry around productivity and procrastination, and I think the crux here is that if you don't set your goals and you don't set your actions towards those goals, other people will set them. So you will have goals set by the social media company, which is to generate profit. So they're setting the goal for you, which is to increase your engagement time. And because you're not being proactive about things, you just get stuck in and get engaged with that instead, which isn't working towards your goal, it's working towards their goal. Also, I think taking action is often the hard thing. It creates a new future and in the physical world, and that can be scary for people. It can push you outside of your comfort zone, and I think that is a big barrier for some people as well. You can use discipline, you can make it fun, you can go David Goggins on it, you can do the thing, whatever it is that you need to do to make action work for you. The best way I've found is use time blocking. So just say that I'm going to do this every week at this time and just turn it into a habit, so you don't even have to think about it. I did that with exercise. First thing when I woke up, just start exercising. I did that with my ice bath, just do that first thing. It becomes an ingrained habit and it becomes a lot easier, is the way I've dealt with it. I've always been quite proactive at work, I'd like to think, although sometimes it's been difficult to understand what is the best action to take at any one point. I found this a lot easier in my personal life, where I've always known the things that make me feel good and the things that make me feel bad. So that's something I've always been able to differentiate. In my personal personal life, I actually didn't really focus on the goal setting aspect. I just focused on doing the thing, and I found that to be a pretty useful technique. So I ran a marathon without really setting a goal to run a marathon. I set the goal initially just to run for 15 minutes most days, and through that I built up enough stamina to run a marathon. I also did an ultra marathon, or an ultra gravel event, which was a 300k off-road cycling event, and that was basically driven by me just cycling every weekend because I enjoyed it, and I eventually decided to set a goal to push me that little bit harder. So you don't always need the goal, but I find the goal is super useful if you need to push yourself that little bit harder, and then also you get the benefit of that extrinsic kind of reward at the end, i.e. a medal or a trophy, or a good picture. Another thing to think about here is that theory is not often a good picture of reality, and sometimes your experience can just be so much better. The theory can be wrong. And there's another great example in Anti-Fragile where Taleb's sitting down with a senior economist, and the senior economist, who's obviously very mathematical, says, I don't know how these traders can trade all these complex, exotic options without knowing Gersnow's theorem, which was a really rare, highly sophisticated piece of mathematics at the time. And the answer Nassim thought was just they trade on intuition and experience. They know how these things move. They have a feel for it. They don't need to know Gersnow's theorem to trade these instruments. But arguably, one of the reasons or contributing factors towards the financial crisis was that people relied too much on the theory, which was incorrect, and didn't see the problems with the theory, which Nassim Taleb did, and that's why he made so much money. Also, from my experience with traders, a lot of them don't know the theory. A lot of them are trading on intuition and winging it, I would say. So there we have it. That's my 3-step plan to being more intelligent than 99% of people. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to hear more from me, don't forget to check out this one here. Thank you.